I really wasn't expecting 2026 to deliver two new ways of understanding my favorite movie, and yet here we are with another take on The Matrix. Honestly, can't complain. A couple months ago, I made a video analyzing the influence of Out of Control by Kevin Kelly on The Matrix, one of 3 books the cast were assigned before filming, when a commenter, shout out ArcL, pointed something out. According to a behind-the-scenes documentary, the 3 books were:
I had to read Baudrillard, I had to read Out of Control, which was about systems, evolution, robots. And then there was another book which was Evolutionary Psychology.
But turns out Introducing Evolutionary Psychology by Evans and Zarate was the wrong book. Keanu didn't remember the name during the interview, and the editor just guessed. As ArcL pointed out in a Rolling Stone article entitled The Quiet Man, Keanu set the record straight. The 3rd book was actually The Moral Animal by Robert Wright, a 1994 bestseller that argues evolutionary psychology is the key to understanding human nature. Massive Matrix nerd cred for this correction arc. So I immediately bounced to the library, found a copy, and started plowing through. But unlike Out of Control, this book's influence on the film wasn't exactly jumping off the pages. It really wasn't obvious why this book was assigned. I kept reading, thinking eventually something would click. It never happened. As it turns out, I wasn't the only one perplexed about the connection. In one of his later books, Why Buddhism is True, Robert Wright himself wrote, "I'm not sure what kind of link the director saw between my book and The Matrix. But after going through my usual brainstorming process, drinking way too much coffee, banging my head against the wall, I think I figured it out." The difference is, whereas Baudrillard and Kelly offered the Wachowskis theories to think with, Wright gave them something to think against. For Wright, evolutionary psychology explains who we are and why we do what we do. For the Wachowskis, it explains why the system that oppresses us is organized the way it is, and why hacking it, like our heroes, is what a truly free mind must do. Well, to break that down, we're gonna have to pay our respects to Charles Darwin, revisit some banger old school cartoons, and yes, this time we will be talking about resurrections. A little bit. Let's dive in. Alright guys, let's do a warp speed recap of all 4 films. The Matrix follows Neo, a hacker who discovers his world is a computer simulation built by machines to harvest human energy. He's recruited by Morpheus, a rebel leader in the real world who believes Neo is the one, a prophesized figure who will liberate mankind and end the war. Neo eventually realizes his destiny, defeats the system's agents led by Smith, and vows to destroy the Matrix. But in the sequel, Neo learns the One is just a cyclical control mechanism designed to reload the system and preserve machine dominance. Faced with a choice between saving humanity and saving Trinity, he chooses Trinity, breaks the cycle, causing the simulation to rapidly degrade at the hands of Smith, who is replicating like a virus. In the 3rd movie, Neo strikes up a deal with the machines, defeats Smith, and sacrifices himself so peace between man and machine can be achieved. The 4th film, set decades later, finds Neo and Trinity resurrected and reinserted into a new Matrix, their memories suppressed, and their connection deliberately managed by a system that thrives on their longing for each other. Neo is Thomas Anderson, a game designer, and Trinity is Tiffany, a suburban mom, until a new iteration of Morpheus helps Neo wake up again. Now understood as 2 halves of the One, Neo and Trinity escape and return to remake the Matrix on their own terms. The end. Wright's argument in The Moral Animal is that everything we feel, crave, and prioritize in life was shaped by natural selection. The traits that helped our ancestors survive and perpetuate their genes are the same ones that characterize the human psyche today. And so, if we can grasp the evolutionary why behind our impulses, we can gain the perspective needed to choose which ones to follow and which ones to deny. The book is part biography of Darwin, part catalog of claims like women naturally prefer men with status and resources because those qualities historically improve the survival odds of their offspring, or that humans form hierarchies because higher rank means better mates, healthier children, and thus greater genetic success. And while it's easy to cynically conclude that all of our most noble human traits are really just fantasies engineered by natural selection to pass on our DNA, Wright suggests we need to reject that and consciously separate what we're programmed to do from what we should do. The only thing even sorta Matrixy was a section in the book about delusion, where he claims that it's evolutionarily advantageous to bullshit ourselves because it makes us more socially effective. But even then, it's not super clear how this maps onto Neo's journey. Wright has his own theory, however. Right after admitting he's not sure why his book resonated with the Wachowskis, he posits an interpretation of the film that aligns with his prescribed antidote for our evolutionary impulses: Buddhism and meditation. It goes like this: the Matrix is our emotions. Just as Neo is enslaved by a false reality engineered to extract energy for the machines, we are enslaved by feelings that are also a kind of delusion, impulses engineered by natural selection to puppeteer us into passing on our genes. Both the Matrix and emotions are
a prison for your mind.
Natural selection makes things that promote genetic survival feel good, and things that threaten survival feel bad. So whenever we feel something bad, our programming demands we believe it and react to it. But like Neo and the Matrix, we can choose to hack it.
What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent. Others can be broken. Understand?
Vipassana meditation is Wright's version of hacking the Matrix. Meditation requires observing your reactions and feelings without blindly obeying or reacting to them, to separate, for example, the stimulus of an anxious thought from the response of panicking. If you realize your feelings are just code, you can hack them, just as Neo realizes that if the Matrix is just code, he can, well...
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. Trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
The more you practice that separation, the more you understand you are not your feelings, and when your evolutionary programming comes a call-in, you get very good at saying no. Neo realizes he doesn't have to dodge bullets, that's just reacting to the system. He can bend the system to his will. The peak of mindfulness is mastery over biological reflexes, to sever the link entirely between stimulus and response, to realize feelings are just an emotional hallucination, to see past them, just as Neo, by the end, sees past the illusion, revealing the code underneath. While I appreciate this interpretation and think it maps onto the movie quite nicely, it's very clearly Wright promoting his own conclusions through the lens of the movie. But then again, that's just another testament to how incredibly complex and universal this story is. However, I'm not convinced this is what the Wachowskis had in mind when they assigned the book. For my take on that, we're gonna have to step back a bit and reflect on how weird it is that the Wachowskis assigned a book about, of all subjects, evolutionary psychology. Why? Because some of the loudest critics of EvoPsych are on the left, and the Wachowskis' work is pretty thoroughly steeped in left-wing ideas. Sense8 is all about radical empathy and queer collectivism. Jupiter Ascending is a not very subtle metaphor for the ruling class consuming the working class beneath them. And then there's the character of Switch, who in the original draft of The Matrix was supposed to be a man in the digital world, reflecting the Wachowskis' own experience with gender. But they changed it because, in Lily's words, the world wasn't ready. Oh yeah, and Cornel West, a prominent socialist activist philosopher, has straight up lines in Reloaded. Critics argue that EvoPsych takes present-day inequalities and then reverse engineers a natural selection story to justify them. When you say something is an evolutionary adaptation, you're basically saying it's inevitable. If men dominate and women nurture because that's what got our ancestors' genes into the next generation, then hierarchy and inequality are just human nature, and conveniently, there's nothing we can do about it. Another criticism is what's called the just so story problem.
This is the story of how the leopard got his spots.
Named after the series of Kipling fables that explain through silly magical logic how an elephant got its trunk or a camel got its hump.
So all the elephants went off to borrow new noses from the crocodile. Then nobody spanked anyone anymore.
The charge is that evolutionary psychologists are doing what Kipling does: observe a behavior, invent a plausible sounding adaptive story to explain it, and then present it as science. Because we can't run controlled experiments on prehistoric humans, these narratives are almost impossible to falsify, and you can concoct a survival story to justify any behavior. So, given this, there's likely a fundamental disagreement between Wright and the Wachowskis. For Wright, the programming of EvoPsych is an inconvenient problem, but ultimately we can use reason and things like meditation to rise above it. But I'd wager for the Wachowskis that framing misses something crucial, that evolutionary psychology created conditions that are exploitable, and we have social systems that are designed to exploit those conditions. Sure, we can all be more reflective, and awareness might soften the worst consequences of our biological coding, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that society is organized to exploit those conditions, and if we can choose to change how we respond to our programming, we can also choose to change how our society exploits it. So let's say you're a highly advanced AI, and your goal is to design a system that keeps humans compliant and controlled. Knowing what Wright's book maps out, that humanity is coded to hunger for status, dominance, belonging, etc., what kind of simulation would you engineer? A totalitarian surveillance state like in 1984? A chemically induced stupor like in Brave New World? A retro-futurist bureaucratic nightmare like Brazil? Well, that's not what the machines in the Matrix build. They just come up with Western capitalism circa the late 90s.
This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century.
Now, one might argue that the Wachowskis weren't specifically targeting capitalism, they were just recreating the general vibe of the world the audience was currently living in. But the associations are hard to ignore. The system's enforcers are agents who look like corporate stooges, there's a visual link between Neo's blowhard boss and the agents, and Neo, isolated in a cubicle, is not unlike being isolated in a pod. In both cases, the system is extracting value from him. The machines tried to create a paradise for humanity, but that didn't work out.
Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered? It was a disaster.
Why? Well, according to Smith,
I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through misery and suffering.
another way to say this is using Wright's words, that natural selection designed us to be perpetually dissatisfied. Think of it like this. If a caveman killed a pig and felt permanently satisfied, they'd stop hunting and eventually starve. So evolution encoded us with what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. No matter your achievement, the gratifying feeling of success fades quickly and the craving returns. We, by design, can't get no satisfaction. The machines could have recreated an ancestral environment with caves, hunting, spears, and such, but they didn't, because modern capitalism is far more sophisticated at exploiting the hedonic treadmill.
Which is why the Matrix was redesigned to this, the peak of your civilization.
For just one example, advertising. It pumps up our inadequacies, then sells us a trend to cure it. This car will signal your dominance. These clothes will win the tribe's approval. But the dopamine eventually fades, the trend expires, and the market pounces with the next upgrade. This is the hell Thomas Anderson is stuck in at the beginning of The Matrix Resurrections. Neo is reanimated and reinserted into the Matrix as a game developer who, like Lana, reached the peak of cultural achievement by creating an iconic trilogy. And yet, no satisfaction is apparent. He's stuck in therapy, highly medicated, and pimped out by a corporation full of cynical goons. While it may seem like a departure from the logic of the original trilogy for Smith to be recast as the head of a gaming company, it's not. Smith was always a corporate enforcer, a middle manager of a system engineered to exploit our evolutionarily encoded dissatisfaction. The analyst later reveals that this is the key to the performance of the system. The more unfulfilled you are, the more energy is produced.
Turns out in my Matrix, the worse we treat you, the more we manipulate you, the more energy you produce.
So long as Neo stays poised in a state of perpetual yearning for Trinity, the system thrives.
The key to it all? You. And her. Quietly yearning for what you don't have, while dreading losing what you do. For 99.9% of your race, that is the definition of reality. Desire and fear, baby.
It's what capitalism is optimized to produce. So the Wachowskis go a step beyond Wright. Meditation and self-awareness might ease our evolutionary impulses, but there's still a system out there that was built to exploit them. The first step is reclaiming your most sacred emotions from biological utility. The second is reclaiming them from the system optimized to exploit them. First you hack yourself, then you hack the system. Hacking yourself means refusing to let predatory systems use your evolutionarily encoded predilections to promote their own ends. For example, the Architect. He designed the entire cycle of the One around human biological programming, and even speaks like a cynical evolutionary psychologist.
Your 5 predecessors were, by design, based on a similar predication, a contingent affirmation that was meant to create a profound attachment to the rest of your species, facilitating the function of the One. Vis-a-vis love.
Basically, love is just a chemical fluctuation the machines take advantage of to ensure Neo reinserts his code into the source. If love is just a biological tool to perpetuate the tribe, then Neo is almost guaranteed to do what the Architect wants if the alternative is watching all of humanity die. But Neo is our hero because he hacks that evolutionary drive and chooses Trinity instead. It's the kind of love the system can't account for because it's irrational, it's untethered from genetic imperatives. It's the same thing Smith can't understand. Smith and the Architect are essentially the Darwinian cynics Wright warns of in his book.
You believe you're fighting for something, for more than your survival? Is it freedom or truth? Perhaps peace? Could it be for love? Illusions, Mr. Anderson, vagaries of perception. And all of them as artificial as the Matrix itself. Although only a human mind could invent something as insipid as love.
Again, Neo chooses to persist because that irrational rebellion is the hack that makes us more than just a collection of chemicals oriented towards survival. Hacking our evolutionary impulses is what makes a free mind. And what does a mind do once it's free? Well, for the Wachowskis, it moves on to hack the system that preys on those impulses. This is why the sequels were necessary. Without them, the Wachowskis would be making a movie about personal enlightenment, when I think they're much more interested in social transformation. What makes the One is his capacity to remake the system.
When the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside who had the ability to change whatever he wanted, to remake the Matrix as he saw fit.
Neo's piece at the end of the third film is nothing less than, well, a revolution. The status quo is transformed, peace is achieved, and humans who want to live in the real world are free to do so. Resurrections carries this even further. If a free mind were simply about reclaiming your emotions from biology, then the film could have ended with Neo and Trinity retiring quietly to a life in Zion. But a free mind reclaims emotions from the system that exploits them as well.
We were on our way to remake your world.
Change a few things.
Kind of like the paint the sky with rainbows idea.
Just remind people what a free mind can do.
The Wright versus Wachowski question is one of the oldest fault lines in political philosophy, the question of agency versus structure. For Wright, everyone can be the One. If you study yourself, understand your biases, and maybe even meditate, you can rise above your programming. From a conservative or classical liberal view, if you fix the individuals, society fixes itself. If you can liberate yourself from evolutionary coding, then we don't need to worry about the system that preys on it. For the Wachowskis, telling people to simply rise above the system is at best naive. Not everybody has the capacity or resources to unplug and become the One. Organizing society around the expectation that they should is tantamount to accepting that there's a lot of people who are gonna fall through the cracks and there's nothing that can be done about it. It's tough. The benefits of self-awareness are undeniable, and promoting the idea individuals can choose better undoubtedly yields positive results, but statistically, not everyone finds the red pill. Do we build society around the exceptional cases and call the rest a personal failing? Or do we build it around the statistical reality and then risk further perpetuating the very limitations that we're trying to overcome? I'm more than comfortable leaving it at the admission that this is something that I struggle with every single day. But I think this fight against EvoPsych cynicism points to something else. The thing about a system that aggressively capitalizes on our base impulses is that, as the system advances, it gets more sophisticated at leveraging them. The result for entertainment is more and more content, media engineered to mean absolutely nothing, just trigger the right response in the right demographic at the right moment. Pure neurostimulus, thus the post-credit scene of The Matrix Resurrections.
Face reality, people. Movies are dead. Narrative? Dead.
Media is nothing but neural trigger response and viral conditioning.
Wait, what are you two talking about?
Cat videos.
What we need is a series of videos that we call the Catrix.
The cynicism saturating this film is largely Lana processing what it felt like to re-enter an industry that had moved aggressively in this direction. But also embedded in there is the suggestion that cinema at its best does something beyond pump slack-jawed brain rotters full of dopamine, something that The Matrix did for an entire generation, open our minds and force us to look at the world in a whole new way. Perhaps the Merovingians said it best.
Art, films, books, they were all better. Originality mattered. You gave us space, Zuckersack, and couch flicks, climate-y wiki business.
If we think of entertainment as just the most sophisticated delivery system for dopamine, then we're never going to create something meaningful, something that could potentially inspire people to gain the consciousness needed to improve society. Hacking the Matrix ultimately isn't just about reclaiming your emotions from your biology or pushing for structural change in society. It also means refusing to be treated as a collection of neurotriggers to be optimally fired, and demanding from art what only a free mind can make and what only a free mind can receive. Hey y'all, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, follow me on Letterboxd, and be on the lookout for my next video, which will be on, I have no idea. Take it easy, happy summer, peace.